Sit!
Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss Dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
And welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Rich Dotson, here with my fellow nerds, Matt O'Hara.
Hey.
And Garret Price.
How's it going?
It's going well. We're here during the NFL trade deadline went down today. A flurry of action that we saw.
A lot more than expected.
Woo. Yeah, way more.
That was more like a blizzard, my friend, than a flurry.
Yeah, after the Hockenson news broke, you're like, oh, that's the biggest trade of the day. And then like, boom, 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 boom. So some Dynasty impact there we'll talk about today. Mm-hmm. And we're going to carry that over actually to the Nerd Herd show and actually do an actual Dynasty trade question show. Mm-hmm. We're breaking down the Discord channel.
Yep.
People in there, their actual Dynasty trade questions. So it's going to be an exciting show here. We got a lot to talk about.
Because, I mean, it's the trade deadline for NFL is always before most leagues. I guess there's a few that might do it like on the actual NFL trade deadline. But this is also a big time of year for people getting their trades, and people are starting to figure out if they're contenders or not. And there's a lot of trades going down right now.
I don't like trade deadlines in Dynasty leagues.
I do, as long as I like it right to the playoffs.
Yeah. Fair, yes.
Because I know there's some leagues that you can trade even championship week. I don't like that.
I don't like that either.
I hate it.
There. Yep.
I don't like that as well.
Yeah,
we're in one league together
playoffs.
like that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, all the way up to literally the playoffs. And it's just like the NFL, that's where you see a flurry of action because they're like, hey,
last minute.
Because there's a lot of middle of the road teams. So people are like, oh, I got to win this week. Like, I got to win this week and I'm in. All right, I'll give you 323 first for Brandon Cooks.
And
oh, no.
And all it takes is one early season bad trade to kind of make somebody gun shy. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Because who knows if you make a bad trade, somebody gets injured right after you trade for them, something like that.
Which
and then
happens.
you don't want to make another trade. But if you wait until the very last moment, at least you know you're having for that week.
Yeah. He is healthy today.
He is healthy right now going into the playoffs.
I usually like to push it off until the end. Like, no, I'm a true contender. Unless I have like a clear hole. Well, to be fair, I make trades throughout the whole year. But like for a lot of those teams, like I wait a little bit because nothing's worse than trading for a running back like 3 weeks before the playoffs.
For sure.
You got to wait. Like, how old's the running back here? Like I said, Raheem Mostert is my buy of the week last week. And, you trade for him now, you have no idea if he's going to be there next week, 5 hours from now, or whatever.
Well, and that's even part of like the dynasty strategy of it. Like if you're a rebuild team, one, it's not good to trade for players in season because they're the most expensive in season. So you're getting less for your picks, the players at a premium. But also is now you're carrying the risk of those players you just traded for getting injured, getting traded to a bad team. Whereas picks, they maintain their value. And if anything, their value grows. So if you can wait to deal those picks in the offseason, it's twofold goodness.
Happens all the time. I literally traded for Marquise Brown, and he didn't play. He hasn't played for me yet. Like, literally, I traded for him. He got hurt the next day. And I was like, oh, this is
And
sweet.
now Nuke is going nuclear.
Yeah, and Rondale Moore looks good there.
He's played great.
They have Zach Ertz. Their running game is non-existent.
Well, I was trying to
Which helps the passing game, I guess, sort of.
Eno's actually doing okay for fantasy managers right now.
He says okay.
Yep.
So we got a lot to talk about today. Trades, injuries, ton of stuff to get into. Before we get into all that, we got to tell you about our friends at Prize Picks. Yes, Prize Picks, where you can get all your player props in there and mix it all up, right? Like you get the World Series going on, you get the NBA going on. I know they had a free bet pretty much going on. It was like 15% off Devin Booker, like he scored 20 points tonight. So what's nice is if you go through here with Prize Picks and say there's like, hey, I really like Tyreek Hill over 90.5 yards because he's on pace for 2 million yards this year. So like 90 is easy to get for him because that's where he's at, 9.5 yards for Chicago. Or,
what about this one? PJ Walker, 190.5. Throwing to DJ. Come on. More.
Wait, who are they playing? Who are they playing?
They're playing the Cincinnati Bungles.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Dude, that's clear over. They just lost
definitely over.
Akuze.
Right. For the year.
ACL.
Yep.
Eli Apple was hurt last week. We just saw Jacoby Brissett. Those Browns wide receivers were wide open on Monday night.
Terrace Marshall has been playing pretty well this past week.
Or just even playing is good,
This is good. This is good. I mean, that's a prospect we liked out of LSU with some upside, some good go straight speed.
Speaking of the over-unders, did you see the guy that had the 17-leg parlay?
No.
and lost on Joe Mixon.
And he lost it on Joe Mixon last night.
Get
he hit
out.
16 straight, and he took the over on the rushing yards for Joe Mixon.
What was it? Do you remember?
It was like 60, or how much money?
No. Like the
it was
yardage total.
64 and a half or something like that. It was in the 60s.
Yeah.
And he took the over, and he had bet like $7 or $10, and he was in line for like $123,000.
He hedged his bet.
Did he hedge it?
He hedged it and he bet $34,000 on the under Joe Mixon rushing yards and hit
Okay.
on that. So he ended up
That
winning like
helps.
$28,000 or something like that. So
Smart.
yeah, I would hedge too.
100% hedging my bet.
Something along those lines.
Yes.
I mean, you just see me at the game last night. I thought I was going to win the 50-50 raffle. The Browns. I thought we were going to win the Powerball and be billionaires. I was like, this life is about to be good tonight.
Fantastic.
My boy's like, we're never going to win. I'm like, now with that kind of attitude, I'm an optimist. Like, I'm always thinking we're going to win. So and that's what Prize Picks does. Like, the over, the under, parlays, NBA, Russian, MMA, soccer, video games. Like, everything's on here. Tennis, MMA. There's so many different things.
Video games on here?
College football. There's a video
You
game.
could probably do like
icon on
World
here.
of War or something like that.
Oh my god.
NHL, Brandon Cooks, 58
Warcraft.
and a half over yards. Right now, he's probably going to come up with a mysterious injury. Like his hamstrings all of a sudden get tightened up over here. He's going to be the new
Count.
Kadarius Toney because he's mad at the Texans because he didn't get traded. So Prize Picks, get on there. All you have to do is use the promo code NERDS. That's what we ask. Use the promo code NERDS. They're going to give you a 100% instant deposit match up to $100, and you support the show at the same time. That's the big thing too. You're supporting the Dynasty Nerds as well. Like we're
100%.
not just doing this for our health.
Brandon Cooks over under 1 yard this week.
Under.
He's not playing, right? They're not going to play him
I-
after all that, right?
It's 58 and a half.
I don't know.
He missed practice today for personal reasons.
Well, it was in case they ended up dealing him. No, they didn't deal him. Welcome back to practice.
I don't know about that.
We'll see.
I would take the under.
He
on
might
that
get Cam
one, too.
Akers.
Dude,
We don't know.
PJ Walker over, Brandon Cooks under, and then
I don't know. I could see a spike game. Just mad at the world.
there's a Russian one on here. I
Going
saw
scorched
this.
earth.
125 yards,
Yeah.
two tutties.
That's right.
Oh, Austin Eckler versus Atlanta, 53 and a half rushing yards. I like the over on that.
I would take the over. Their rushing defense.
David Montgomery with the new acquired Bradley Chubb, 53 and a half rushing yards under. Khalil Herbert's going to go
Khalil
over.
Herbert's going to get 75 to 80.
So there's tons of these on it. I mean, literally, there's hundreds of different parlays you could take. Prize Picks is the best legal way for you to get your player props in there. 2 to 5 players win 10 times your entry. Use that promo code NERDS and come out big. Now, let's talk some injuries, shall we?
Injuries.
Biggest one is Jamar Chase. This is the hip injury. It's like a hairline fracture of his hip with a knee boo-boo. So they're not going to put him on IR, but he's supposed to miss like a month. It's weird that they wouldn't put him on IR if he's going to miss a month.
It is a little bit surprising. You would think that they would, put him on there.
I
bring
saw
some people
things
up.
that were like closer to 6 weeks for this.
Yeah, they
injury.
said 4 to 6 is
Yeah.
what I saw. So I'm very surprised. And maybe they got a Jerry Jones type thing where somebody in there thinks that he's going to be back sooner, and like kind of like they did with Dak. But
Right.
I have no idea. Either way, I don't know if it was how well the Browns played last night, which we'll take a little credit there. But that offense looked anemic without Jamar Chase.
T. Higgins, I mean, besides that one
Garbage
bad play
time,
on
yeah.
Greedy Williams, who literally had to come back in the game. He was sick. Like, he should have been playing that day. Like, he was under the weather and sick. So he had to sit out for a little bit of the game
And
and put it back in.
he
got
went up
toast.
over him and got it. It was a nice catch. Greedy was in a good spot.
I know, but if he was a little bit more healthy, he'd have a little bit up to him.
Another 2 inches there to tip that ball.
But, I mean, it's a big thing for Teagan to come in and be the number one guy in this offense, with Tyler Boyd being the number 2. We talked about Joe Mixon getting eaten up there. Hayden Hurst had an okay game there. So
Sure.
it is a different game without Jamar Chase. And you get to be careful. Shakira said it best, the hips don't lie. And you don't want to Bo Jackson, Jamar Chase. You want to make sure he comes back and he's healthy. So for me, like, I'm not rushing this in the least bit. I mean, the Bengals look like they have the Super Bowl hangover. Odds of them making the playoffs are probably
Somebody's got to
35%.
make it out of the North, but right now all the teams are like not trying to win.
Well, the Ravens have the best. Well, the Steelers have 0% chance.
They're not making it.
Browns have, in my heart,
1,000,000%.
20% chance.
Only 20%.
Wow,
in
your heart is
Well, they play
dark.
like Monday night.
But they get
Your
Watson
heart
back.
is usually like 120%.
Yeah.
That's what
I know that shows you how gloomy the odds are.
Yeah. All right.
It would be a lot different if like the Jets game or the Chargers game or like there was like 3 or 4 games that like could have gone the other way. It would feel a lot different at 4-4 right now.
I mean, Jamar's had these couple big games here, which has helped. If not, we could have saw a dip possibly on Jamar Chase. There's a possible dip on Jonathan Taylor right now when we're talking like we're looking at top 5 dynasty startup players. You know, like because I know I got some stuff. People are like, "Oh, you still have Tyreek Hill in your top 10?" Like, what? He's older. I'm like, yeah, it's Tyreek Hill, man. Now he's on pace for 2,000 yards. I got him for a first-round pick.
Is it the
23 first before the season started?
Is it 4 games he's gone over 160?
Correct.
This season so far? Yeah.
Correct.
And how many? 8 weeks we've had so far, right?
He's already got
other week.
997 yards.
I'm just checking.
Unreal production.
And
Unreal.
Jalen Waddle's got the 5th most receiving yards
Yeah.
in there. And we were worried, like, how's this going to affect Jalen Waddle? Is this a dip? No, he's still too good.
No, they're just going to go scorched earth, nuclear, whatever word you want to use. They're incredible right now.
What do you think? Like, I have to look. I know I moved Jalen Waddle up too, but do you think Jalen Waddle, obviously if you have Jalen Waddle on your dynasty roster, this is not an actual statement because you wouldn't trade him for the world.
Sure.
But you think like outside, like people don't, you think Waddle's undervalued in dynasty? Like, do you think, let me put it this way, undervalued at this point.
Like in a startup?
Should he be in the same tier with Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase? I know that's crazy to sound, but should Jalen Waddle be, with the youth being only 20 years old, should he be in the same tier as Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson?
He's 23, Jalen Waddle. He's going to be 24 in November, just to let you know.
Oh, never mind. He's a little old.
Sign him up for AARP.
Justin Jefferson is younger than him.
Interesting.
Well, that makes definitely sense. But okay, let me put it a different way then. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, definitely 1-1-1-2.
Correct.
What other receiver right now in Dynasty would you take over Jalen Waddle?
That's a good question because I think it's been somewhat ambiguous since the beginning of the season. Guys have moved like up and down inside that list, but there's like 12 players that you could argue anywhere from like 3 to 15. It's really, really interesting because some of them are a little bit on the older side, but they're producing right now, like Tyreek Hill.
Yep.
Some of them are younger players that we've seen glimpses, but not consistency, like CeeDee Lamb, Michael Pittman Jr., guys like that. So, but like no one's really taken the bull by the horns.
And then there's guys like A.J. Brown going berserk this past week.
Yeah.
But there's been also ups and downs with him this year.
He's had some weeks where it's been a little trickier. So that's been the tough part is that range right now is a fantastic range if you can get in at wide receiver 11, but having to buy the wide receiver 3 is pretty expensive.
So is there another, would you take, so those receivers you named, that he named, Matt, CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, and Michael Pittman Jr., would you take any of them in a startup over Jalen Waddle?
I think I'd take AJ.
I think A.J. Brown would be the guy that out of that list. You know, CeeDee Lamb played pretty well this week too.
He did. He had a good week this week.
And he's starting to look a lot better with Dak in the lineup. Also, I think he doesn't bring as much juice, obviously, as a Jalen Waddle, but he also doesn't have as much competition for the targets either. So they're interesting cases. I think Waddle is probably more, obviously more explosive than CeeDee Lamb. So. But A.J. Brown, to me, is just bigger, stronger, tougher, faster than most other wide receivers. Like, no one else has that kind of body. You could make a very similar argument that Jalen Waddle, there aren't any, other than the guy that's on his team that's probably faster than him. There's not a lot of guys that are like Jalen Waddle as well. So I think both those guys are unique. But I would give the slight edge to A.J. Brown, but it's not like a big leap.
What about Debo is the other guy that like could be in that group that we hadn't mentioned?
Debo could be in that group. The 2-year difference on age there, that him being 26 going to be 27, is enough to slightly down.
And his injury history, I think, has to come into play a little bit as well. It always is little things here and there with him, and he had the one huge year, obviously, last year. But again, this year I feel like it's little bumps and bruises. And what is it, a hamstring that he's out with now?
I think it is hamstring.
Yeah, it's nothing ever. It's not really major things, but he he does have a tendency to miss 1 or 2 or 4 games a year.
And on top of that, I mentioned some of the older players. We didn't even mention Stephon Diggs and Cooper Kupp, who are both playing fantastic every single week.
Yeah, but
they're older.
There,
it's
again, I'm
it's
talking about startup. I'm not talking about for this year. I'm talking like a startup.
I know, but
draft.
Diggs and Waddle would be close in a startup for me.
See, not for me. It'd be,
No?
No. I mean, I love Diggs, but for my first round pick, like I want the talent and the youth. Like I'd be willing to give up, a player that's going to outproduce my player on a point per game basis by 1 or 2 points, like not much, for 4 more years of production. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna do a deep dive. If I can't get in tonight, because again I was at the Monday night game last night, so I don't know how late I stay up tonight. But definitely tomorrow I'm gonna do a deep dive in my dynasty rankings with all these trades and everything, and I think I'm gonna bump Jalen Waddle to my number 3 overall player ahead of Jonathan Taylor. I think I'm going to bump him there.
Oh, in 1 QB rankings?
In 1 QB rankings. I think I'm going to move Jalen Waddle by number 3 overall. And I think I'm going to bump J.J. Brown ahead of Jonathan Taylor as well.
J.J. Brown. What about his brother, A.J.?
I think I got M.J. Brown ahead of him. Okay. And then,
that makes sense. No, that does make sense.
He's a smooth criminal, so I got to make sure he gets in there. But you know what I mean? I mean, these are like... offset of Tyreek Hill, somebody that had that explosive. And just... imagine if Tyreek Hill wasn't on that roster. You know what I mean? Like what he would be doing. So it's an interesting dynamic we have in Dynasty. It's been a really weird year. I know Jonathan Taylor's been banged up, and that goes back to the consistency we've seen out the history of fantasy football. The running back position, no matter how talented you are, no matter how good you are, and how young you are, it's always gonna be the most fluid position because it's too easy to get banged up. It's too easy to lose. Again, 1 year that you can lose could be a 1/6 of your total overall value. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, that's a massive loss when you're talking about almost 20%, 15% of your overall history value. Losing 15% immediately like that. So I'm going right back to, because it's hard for me to even move those running backs up by dynasty rankings to be a first-round grade, where I've consistently, over the last 18 years I've been playing Dynasty, valued those young receivers in the first round no matter what. Even when you got Jonathan Taylor like looking me in the face, it's like, yeah, Jonathan Taylor's nice, but like, would I rather have CeeDee Lamb or would I rather have A.J. Brown, where 6 months ago taking A.J. Brown ahead of Jonathan Taylor wasn't even a possibility.
Sure.
And now if it was a startup, I would take A.J. Brown ahead of Jonathan Taylor.
I mean, I get it because you get so many more years. They are very consistent, but you have to look at the other side of the coin, though. I mean, like there's only so many of these running backs that are going to produce. So in a startup, you have to get them somewhere, or you're going to be scrambling later on in the draft. So it is a little bit. You got to kind of juggle those questions in your brain as to whether or not you take the young stud and have him for extra years, or you take the running back there and hope another wide receiver slides, because there are so many wide receivers.
And that's where the rub is, because you could easily wait a few rounds and say, okay, I'm going to then take Chris Olave, and I'm going to take Terry McLaurin, and I'm going to take guys like that are good players.
No.
On the flip side, I'm arguing
No.
for you now, Rich.
No.
This guy's the worst.
It's not something I do. I go wide receiver as well.
I do as well.
But there are plenty of people that go the opposite way and don't want to struggle and don't want to have to be like every week trying to figure out who the heck they're going to be playing at the running back position. And that's what you sometimes end up with if you go too heavy with the wide receivers early.
And you have to be prepared for, and not that this is a true like zero RB strategy, but you have to be prepared thinking ahead in your rounds 7, 8, 7 through 12 to really, okay, what players at the running back position can I target that right now maybe don't have a ton of value, but they're an injury away, or they're a coaching switch away, or they're, guys like this year would have been Khalil Herbert, Ramondre Stevenson, like those types of players can you target in those later rounds, because then you get the best of both worlds. Doesn't always work out that way and doesn't always work out that easily, but that's what you have to be prepared to do if you're going to go heavy wide receiver early.
Yeah, and that's always my way to go. I'm finding some of those veterans like there, because I know get draft strategy and trade for running backs later. Like you get Derrick Henry, probably. Who knows how late Derrick Henry's going now with his age? You're saying, oh, you can take Jonathan Taylor and then flip side it and go like, oh, Chris Olave. Well, I'd rather go Jalen Waddle than flip side and take Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler. Like on the opposite side.
Sure.
So that's the way I would personally like to go. But it just, I just, the point of it was like, One was Jalen Waddle. Like I wonder where you guys valued him overall as a dynasty, because I'm gonna move up to my third overall dynasty player, which is it's pretty high.
That's
regards.
significant. It absolutely is. Yeah.
And then on top of that, like I think I'm just slowly. I've always been that way. I haven't had many running backs to high. Just going right back to that. You know what? If I'm in the first round, I don't care what running back's there. I mean, yes, Jonathan Taylor's nice, and to be fair,
if Bijan and Breece Hall,
if Bijan was there, he'd be in the first round. If Breece Hall didn't get healthy, he'd still kind of be there. But when those guys go, all it does is push more guys back. Like I would rather start my draft with like, say I had like the 5th or 6th pick with like Michael Pittman Jr. and Mark Andrews, and then figure out the running back position like later. That's the way I usually like to go. It's hard to put those guys out.
For the record, that's how I do it.
I think as a podcast, that's typically how we do it. Yeah. Another guy that might slowly be sneaking back in there. We're like way off the rails as far as like what we're supposed to be talking about.
I wanted to bring it back because I have a question about the Jamar Chase stuff. So before we move on, go ahead.
Yeah, but another guy that might be sneaking back into that like early of the first round conversation, Kyle Pitts. He's been playing pretty well lately. Little bit targeted a little bit heavier
lately, like
past 2 weeks.
Just this
past 2 weeks.
Just this past game.
Like 3 days ago.
he's done well the past 2 weeks.
He had 20-something points in PPR this past week. So
That's right.
But before we move on to the next injury, T. Higgins, I just want to, where are you guys falling? I mean, after this one game where he didn't look great, but the whole Bengals team didn't look great. Yeah. Is this like, are you seeing this as kind of a buying window for T. Higgins because maybe somebody thinks, oh crap, maybe he can't do it
if
without
it opened
Jamar?
Up any sort of window, I would absolutely buy. I still have him dynasty wise right on the fringe of like a wide receiver 1.
Me too. I just wanted to get, I feel the same way. If there's any sort of window opening up because of this one bad week, go in there and get him. That's the way I feel about it. He's not 100%. Sliding down my board at all.
Nope.
I think this was just an off week for all.
And an off week that he still scored a touchdown.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a way to play dynasty. People will look at you and say, God, man, I heard like Rich constantly throw me these like crazy offers, like constant, like, oh wow, T. Higgins had one bad week and now he's offering me like just a 23 first, right? Like, what is he, insane? Which is fair. Like, because I got the same offer, I'm like, what is he, insane? Denied, terrible trade offer, blah, blah. But as a dynasty owner, manager, you should be doing it every single time, because guess what? If you do it 100 times, one time people are going to be say yes and hit yes. Because I send those trades out all the time, and yes, I get rejected. No harm, no foul. I'm fine with that. But every so often, every blue moon, because it's a blue moon, you wake up or you see, oh, trade accepted. You're like, oh, it worked. It worked. Because you never know where people get worried or frustrated, or something can happen where like, yeah, T. Higgins doesn't do anything, and then it has nothing to do with T. Higgins. Then all of a sudden Jamar Chase got hurt, or say Breece Hall tears his knee the same week, and he's like, you know what? I'm just selling everything. I'm blowing this up. It's all garbage. It had nothing to even do with the offer that you put in. Yes, he had a bad game, but it's a bad game on top of the injury, the knee injury, and other people get hurt, and they're like, you know what? I'm just blowing it up. And they see that you're the first one to come in the first, and they say accept. So as a dynasty player, you should be doing that consistently. So if T. Higgins, you feel like he has a slight dip, doesn't have any kind of window,
right?
You should 100% be throwing offers in your league. Because then sometimes what happens as well, they don't accept it. They counter with an offer that you're like, oh, I would easily accept that too. And if you're like, oh, I'm going to try and get a little bit more, and you're like, I would have gave a lot more. So
right. You might have given a low ball, but it's still, whatever they come back with is still very acceptable, or less than you would have paid at your top mark anyways.
It's a way to play. It's how you play the game. You're basically in constant negotiations. I've been in negotiations with somebody in the league for the last 2 days about a player. And we keep going back and forth, and I've been almost close to hit the accept button, and I'm like, I don't even know if this guy's even start for me. You know what I mean? Like, to give up this capital. Like, I don't even know if he's going to start on my team. And you negotiate, and you go, like, we're close, and all of a sudden you're just like, nah, you know what? I'm just out altogether. Another part of the game, but, like, it's why we play the game. Like, drafting and trading is one of the biggest parts about Dynasty. Setting your lineups and playing that way, it's fun and all, but like the negotiating, trading draft picks, trying to build this team is a great part of the game. So you should constantly be in negotiations. T. Higgins, window for Matt.
Open it up.
All right. Anybody else get hurt this week?
Kick it in.
Yeah, we had a few other guys get hurt. Cooper Kupp, ankle injury during the game. Looks like he's still likely to play. So not a ton to worry about there. Same thing with Deebo Samuel. Deebo did, in fact, miss the game this week, but it looks like he is on track to play this week. So 2 big name receivers. Obviously, Jamar Chase was the biggest one with the amount of time he's going to miss. But the other 2 guys looking like they're going to be okay. Devontae Parker, though, his knee injury looks like it could be a tad bit more serious. I haven't heard the official injury diagnosis yet on Devontae Parker. Have you guys heard any news on his knee?
It's a knee.
It is
a history of suckness.
It's a knee injury, and that's what it is. That's all we're going to hear ever.
Yeah, it's Bill
It's
Belichick.
Bill Belichick, man. We're not going to hear anything.
We're going to take it day by day.
Yeah, I mean,
on to Cincinnati.
on to Cincinnati.
He went to college at Louisville. He's got an 81-inch wingspan. He never really panned out.
He's actually been playing okay for the Patriots.
He has been, but what are the fantasy implications of him being out? Other guys getting the ball, right? I mean, it's nothing. I mean, no one's really starting this guy.
Speak for yourself. There have been a couple teams. Actually, you started him against me. Literally yesterday.
Unbelievable.
Look at this guy. Who's starting him? You literally started him against me in a matchup that you lost.
I'm going to get a name tag that says, "Hello, my name is nobody."
Liar, liar.
Who's really starting this guy?
Well, me on a losing team. I lost
48 hours ago.
and I had no choice. I don't know if you saw the rest of my lineup, but it was a no choice situation.
I started Devontae Parker in the league this week as well.
I did too.
Was it also-
Everyone's starting Devontae Parker if they have to.
And they were all no choice situations, right? You had
For the
no
most
choice.
part, yeah.
You had no choice.
Well,
I had no choice.
We're seeing how many injuries are affecting these teams. This is Laquan Treadwell all over again last year.
Oh my gosh.
When it was like, who's starting Laquan Treadwell? And then you literally had to send out like shirts.
I was like, if you listened last year, I put a tweet out there. I'm like, if Laquan Treadwell wins you a championship,
Or
I
no,
will
wins
send
you. It was a game.
It was
No,
just a game.
No, it was a
wasn't
championship. No, it was a
Was it a chip?
championship. It was
Okay.
for a championship. I was like, if he wins you the championship, you screenshot that you won a championship because you had Laquan Treadwell, I will send you a shirt. I sent out like 22 shirts.
I swear it was only just a game. Like, that's how big of a deal it was. And
No, it was a chip.
All right.
Yeah, but
It was
he
a
had
chip.
like a 3 or 4 week stretch where he was putting up like 14, 18, 20, 13.
Sometimes
like,
I forget how many people listen to the show. I feel like it's just the 3 of us talking to each other.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to forget like the tens of thousands of people are out there like listening and you're like, oh yeah, I guess the odds are.
this has big implications.
I long for those
A lot of mailing.
Laquan Treadwell production weeks because, like we were just talking about, I had Devontae Parker in
Just
my
signed
lineup
to the
last week.
Arizona Cardinals practice squad.
Did he really?
Yes, he did.
Telling me there's a chance.
Soon to be on the field.
One step closer to knocking on the field because Marquise Brown will probably be back soon enough. Any more injuries?
Last couple, not of huge consequence. Mark Ingram, knee injury, likely to miss a couple weeks. Just means more work for Alvin Kamara.
Not a big deal unless you're starting him like me.
This guy over here.
Why are you guys talking about my starting lineup?
Last one, Christian Watson, concussion. He's day to day. He might end up playing this week.
If a tree falls in the wood, but no one's there to hear it or see it, did it make a noise? Like, what's going on with this guy right
I was
now?
going to say, odds of Christian Watson being the bust of this class,
Yeah.
over under 100%.
I guess I have to take the under.
I guess I have to because there is no over.
Oh,
There
I'm
is
sorry.
no under to take.
I'm sorry. Over under
99.
96%.
Okay.
That's tough.
That didn't want.
It's tough. That's a good line.
That's a good line. That's a sign of a good line.
Well, and that's the reason that this is interesting because no one on the Packers receiving core has emerged. Like all of these guys are still relevant because no one's become relevant.
Yeah.
So you're kind of waiting for that one play. I mean, I guess we can say Alan Lazard somewhat broke out, but he
Keeps getting injured.
He keeps getting injured too. So
If he would stay healthy, I think he would be the guy that kind of establishes himself.
Yeah.
But he just hasn't.
it's a mess. I'm shocked they didn't end up making some sort of move at the deadline.
They offered a second for Claypool.
Seriously,
Yeah, they did.
Interesting.
because that's what he went for.
It's reported.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
it was.
that's why it was originally.
Chicago's second,
Well, the
huh?
Bears end up giving their second.
Right.
They
Which
had
is
the
gonna be-
Ravens second,
Yeah.
and they end up. People were real shocked. Like, why did they give our second? Turns out
Had
Had
to,
to.
'cause
the
of
Packers had offered their second, and they took. So it took the Bears second to get to them.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So
But there had to have been, for the right price, there had to have been a couple other receivers that could have been had. So
I heard.
I'm surprised.
I heard they checked in on Brandon Cooks, and it was $18 million guaranteed next year. That really turned everybody off about Brandon Cooks. It was $18 million,
That
which makes
contract.
sense. And it goes back to show that Browns trade that they made this summer was the
one of the
biggest
greatest trades
scandal
ever.
trades of all time.
Gave a fifth for Amari Cooper, a wide receiver 1. That contract really isn't even that bad.
They gave a fifth.
Well, now it's not.
No, they gave a
It
fifth.
wasn't even at the time that bad.
It was kind of bad.
It was kind of bad. It got way better once Christian Kirk did his thing.
Absolutely.
But even then, I mean, compared to what we were seeing the market trending towards, don't
forget,
steal the century.
They gave a fifth and got Cooper back and a 6.
Oh, jeez.
It was a money dump. I mean, that's all that was
know.
for Dallas.
And then
I bet they'd really like to have him
then
right
they
now.
inquired about Brandon Cooks, who makes $18 million a year.
But they'd love to have Amari Cooper right now.
Had to be more than money. Had to be something else going on.
I told you it was there was part of the Jerry Jones was trying to get rid of dudes on the team that didn't get the COVID vaccine and like missed time because of it.
Oh, that's right. You were talking about that. He was one of those guys.
Yeah, that was one of them. Yep.
Jerry, silly Jerry. Jerry's old.
He is. He's like 87.
He just turned like 80.
That's why I wanted everyone to get the COVID vaccine.
Don't kill me.
Unbelievable.
Don't
You
kill
gotta be
me.
careful some of these older owners. They're taking on a team. All right. That's all the injuries, right?
That's it. That's it for the injuries.
So we have to, what do you want to talk here? You want to talk trades here? You want to talk
Yeah,
the trades that went
let's go
down?
ahead and get into some of the trades. We originally were going to be talking a lot about the quarterback position.
Before we
but
do
we're
that,
going to save that.
Before we do that, before we get into trades, how about so we can just get right into it? How about you tell people about our friends at Prediction Strike first, and then we'll get into all these trades.
All right. Yeah. Guys, I'm thinking about different players that I wish that I would have had stocks of. And when I say stocks, I'm talking just like the stock market. That's what you get to do at Prediction Strike. You get stocks of different players. Guess which stock is finally going up for me?
Tesla.
On Prediction Strike.
On Prediction Strike. Huh? Who? What?
DJ Moore. Remember all that DJ Moore I bought in the offseason?
Even when he took his helmet off?
It's still going up, baby. Still going up. He had like 27 points this week or something.
It was 160 yards or something crazy.
He
like
went.
That. He went. Not, he went
A 58-yard touchdown.
But he was still having a good game
a nice
before that.
17-point boost right there.
Yes.
12-point boost.
He was still having a good game before that, though. But those stocks are finally going up. But you get to watch these players because we're all invested in these guys from a fantasy perspective. But sometimes there's players that, as much as you try to trade for them, you just can't get them on your team. And it's frustrating. Rich, I know that you said like you are always trying to get Justin Jefferson and you've liked him, but you've never been able to get him on your team. Well, you could get him on Prediction Strike. That's the fun part everyone is available to you. Everyone is open to you. You can go ahead, buy stocks, buy and sell just like you would the stock market. And you know what? You can get a free share of a player if you use the promo code Dynasty. So go to Prediction Strike. Even better yet, go to their app. It's wonderful. Use promo code Dynasty and get a free share of a player.
I'm in 20 Dynasty leagues. Will somebody out there please trade me Justin Jefferson?
I speak for everyone that owns Justin Jefferson. No.
Unbelievable.
We
Can't get. I was even like that Jonathan Taylor,
We
but
will
like in the off season trying to like get Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. People were still saying no.
My shares of Justin Jefferson will go nowhere.
If I go back in time in my time machine that's currently out of gas, if I go back in time, now I'd offer like Jonathan Taylor and my first to get Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. And that would have got it done, I bet.
It probably would have. Matt, you say those shares are untouchable, but everyone has a price. What would the price be if someone, let's say you're like a middle of the road team, what would the price be to get Justin Jefferson off your team?
5 first-round draft picks.
Really? So I come in with 4, 2 of them being top 5, and you're like, nah.
Nope.
Wow.
Deuces.
What if I offered you Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Ooh.
In a
Done
second.
and done.
You can't offer that to me.
If I was in a
In
Devy
the Devy
league,
League, you can. I have him on a couple teams, too.
if I was in a Devy league, I'd offer whatever it took to get Marvin Harrison Jr. Everything. Whatever it took.
He's a very impressive player.
He's about to be
Dude.
fantastic.
We were talking about this actually off the show. If you are in a league,
2024.
we're talking 2023, but 2024 with Travion Henderson, Marvin Harrison Jr.,
Just Buckeyes alone. You don't even have to worry about the other teams.
Marvin Harrison Jr.
I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba could come back because of this injury.
He could. I think he'll come out because he's going to be a top 3 receiver in the draft still.
Yeah.
But he could. I mean, it's possible. We've seen guys do it. Travis Etienne did that a couple years ago where we're like, oh, yeah, he's coming out. And just kidding.
Chris Olave did it last year.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Marvin Harrison Jr. You want that 2024 1-1.
He's looking good.
He's already just bulletproof prospect for me. Bulletproof. He is going to be unbelievable.
He might break our nerd score.
He's going to be unbelievable. Like, immediately, almost, I think, coming out of the draft, I think by the time, it depends where he goes, but like top 15 startup his rookie year.
Size, speed, pedigree, hands.
I felt
wide receiver.
I felt really good about Corey Davis coming out like that too.
Route
to be honest with you.
Yeah, but he didn't have a Hall of Fame dad and go to
or speed
an amazing
yeah.
Big Ten school.
All right, let's talk about some of these trades, shall we?
Let's do it.
One that kicked that off earlier in the day, TJ, a surprise one.
In division.
TJ Hockenson goes to the Vikings for almost nothing. Like, they just basically traded down a couple spots.
It was TJ Hockenson and a 2/4, right, in consecutive years for a second and a third, right?
Yeah.
Basically, what
anything, right?
I listened to Tom Pelissero talk about. He's like, basically, there's a lot of like little moving parts in here. Basically, what it came down to is when you look at the value chart, it basically came to TJ Hockenson for a second round pick is basically what it leveled out to once all the dust settles.
Pretty much, yeah.
And I mean, that obviously speaks to the fact that they weren't going to pay this guy, right? He's gonna command big money just due to the fact that he's going to be one of the only tight ends that's kind of available next year.
Mike Gesicki.
So those two guys.
And
Dalton Schultz actually. So gosh,
Hawkinson's still under contract next year for $9 million.
Oh yeah, he has one more year.
Yeah, they got him for 2 years, a year and a half for 10.
Next year his 5th year option.
He's owed like $9.3 million.
Okay,
next year.
all right.
Yeah,
maybe that's what.
Obviously, a different regime drafted him, but he was still a top 10 pick. You know, Eric Ebron, TJ Hockenson. How'd that work out, Detroit?
Kyle Pitts. Next.
Don't put that jinx on that guy.
Top 10 tight ends. Uh-oh.
That's a bad business right there. That's not good business. I mean, and Hawkinson's 25, still ways to go. I mean, not like a prolific blocker by any means, but still athletic enough. Doesn't do a lot with the ball in his hands, but still a very talented tight end.
Is it worrisome at all that a head coach that used to be a tight end got rid of this tight end?
I don't think it was the head coach that did it. I think it was the GM that did it.
I think he has to sign off on a deal like that, don't you think? Like, yeah, I'm good with that.
You would think. I mean, I think it also just speaks to the fact that they're 1-6, and their concern isn't really with their offense. Their offense is playing well overall. They've just a billion holes on the defensive side of the football. It's basically they have Aiden Hutchinson, who's a good defensive line player, and they have Jeff Okudah at corner, and then everything else is like up for grabs. So I think that's more what it came down to is I don't think that they thought that they would be able to sign him to what he's worth in a couple years, and they would rather just have the second round capital to invest into the defensive line, linebackers, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean he's playing good enough. I mean right now he's averaging 1.87 yards per route, which is like top. I think it's 5th best amongst all tight ends. They obviously lose Irv Smith Jr. Minnesota for 8 to 10 weeks. He's going on IR there.
That guy, man,
can't stay healthy.
He
just cannot stay healthy.
He'll be a free agent next year. So he's going to Minnesota, pairing up with Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. So the middle field should be open for him here. It should be pretty exciting. Kevin O'Connell, a very exciting offensive coordinator there for Minnesota, doing good things there. They're 6-1, obviously there. So for me, I think it's a good fit for Hockenson. They gave up a second-round pick for him, so their intent is probably to see what they have and then sign him long-term there as well. Adam Thielen's 32, 33, so he's not going to be there much longer at all. And on the opposite side, this opens up things for Detroit. Like, if you have Josh Reynolds, this is a nice maintained boost for a guy like Josh Reynolds. And if you're looking for a tight end to offset Josh Reynolds, there's 2 guys here to really look at, right? One was Brock Wright, who, when Hockenson went down last year, he was like their leader there at the tight end position. But he didn't really like show a lot, Brock Wright. The exciting guy to really look into, I put a claim in every league I'm in. I picked up in one where we don't have waiver wire claims, is James Mitchell, the 5th round pick this year, rookie out of Virginia Tech. Had the knee injury, but a big tight end, really good with the ball in his hands. Yards after catch is actually probably his best attribute, I would say. Somebody they're kind of high on. And where they're at now, there's no need to keep seeing what you really have in Brock Wright. This is a good chance to get the rookie James Mitchell involved. So not saying this is guaranteed, but a good waiver wire pickup right now in your leagues to check out for.
Yeah, absolutely.
And their beat writers are saying that as well, right? Like that's the guy that they're going to get a good look at is the Mitchell, James Mitchell, the rookie. So he's the guy that has upside, like you were saying. I mean, I'm not going to beat that to death. So
targets have to go somewhere.
Right?
It's not like Amon-Ra St. Brown's getting any more targets, right? Like it's how many more targets he's going to get?
You would think, but who knows? I mean, he's the only one.
Jameson will be coming back at some point as well. Jameson will.
Dude, no, they said he's not close.
Yeah.
Seriously?
We said
Dan Campbell.
week.
When did that come out?
Dan Campbell last week said it's going to be a while still.
Because literally I was on the podcast, I was like, Jameson Williams got to come out soon. And literally that next day, Dan Campbell's like, yeah, we're hoping to get him back this year, but he's not close still.
And at this point, what's their motivation? Yeah. You know what I mean?
Crappy team. Yeah.
The only thing I would say is like maybe like a game or two at the end of the year just to like get him acclimated to the NFL. But I don't think they're going to rush him back in the least. I think they're going to be overly because same thing with DeAndre Swift. They came out today and Dan Campbell was like, we gave DeAndre Swift too many carries this week. He wasn't ready. So they're wanting to be cautious with these players. And I get it. If you're not going to win this year, why risk injury to your star young players?
Yeah, your core. Your
young
guys.
So yeah, I think they're gonna ratchet it down for him. So it's truly going to be It's going to be the Amon-Ra show now, because if Swift's getting less touches and Hockenson's gone, it's going to be Amon-Ra, and then you'll have Jamal here and there. You'll have DJ Chark. You'll have Josh Reynolds, and then Jamal Williams running the football. Yep. And I think that's what you're going to see for a bulk of the season. So
don't you forget about Craig
Reynolds. Yes, that's right. But this, I think we've seen between injuries and like the fake concussion and all this stuff, a dip, quite a big dip in Amon-Ra St. Brown's value compared to where it was after week 3 and 4, where he was going nuts.
Yeah.
But I think it's normalized to where like this might be a good time if you can get him. If you want him, this would be the time to get him, because he's probably going to be fed a ridiculous amount of targets for the rest of the year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting what happens. Hockenson, like a team like the Lions that couldn't get in the red zone. The Vikings are consistently in the red zone. They're in the top tier for that. What it does for Kirk Cousins, this might open in a super flex league. This might open opportunity. If you need a quarterback, Kirk Cousins might get another slight boost here, because, the quarterbacks right now in the NFL are absolutely abysmal. So it's really going to affect your super flex leagues. Maybe this helps out Kirk Cousins a ton, which it should. More red zone threat, another bigger weapon in the middle of the field to help him out as well. Should open a window to buy him. If you're a contender, a super cheap option that you might throw a dart at is a guy like Josh Reynolds. You can call. Do you have a sleeper by the week by chance? Sleeper, number one hosting platform out there. I host your leagues on Sleeper.
Go ahead, I'll grab it. Go ahead.
He's an interesting ad there to add for real cheap as a wide receiver 4 depth option to see how it goes. Because yes, Jameson Williams will eventually come back, but he might not come back until the playoffs are done and gone there. So that's Josh Reynolds. Might be able to give you double-digit points week in and week out. Definitely Amon-Ra St. Brown still being banged up right now. The concussion going on. Sometimes those can linger.
Josh Reynolds is a guy I picked up in Scott Fishbowl a few weeks back, and now he's finally going to kind of, I think, pay dividends now that there is a vacancy there at the tight end position. So he's a guy that I'm at least somewhat counting on. Scott Fishbowl I'm pretty thin at wide receiver, so I don't have a lot of choices. But nice little ad, I think. See what you get out of him anyway, going down the stretch.
I would have no problem giving this sounds dumb, but I'd give a 4th
or 5th round draft pick,
2/4 for Josh Reynolds.
Okay,
which is nothing.
No, it really is
nothing. But that might get it done, because we were just happy to get the 2/4.
If I had him on one of my squads, that would get it done. A couple 4ths, sure, why not? Yeah. I'll go find somebody else on the waiver wire. Yep. So yeah, but he might actually produce down the stretch, so it might be a worthwhile venture.
It's a worthwhile venture. Maybe just 1/4.
Yeah.
All right, real quick, my sleeper buy of the week. This is a contender buy. Mm-hmm. We've had some rebuild buys lately, but I think a great contender buy right now, because he's somebody that you can actually get. Sometimes, you want to buy the big name players. Like, I want to buy AJ Brown right now. I want to buy, you want to buy those exciting names, and good luck.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Good luck paying an arm and a leg.
You're going to pay for it.
But somebody that you can actually acquire, because they're getting up there in years. Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen is my buy this week. Part of it is he's finally getting healthy. He's finally getting back on the field. And this was kind of a fluke. He has been playing in basically every single game since 2017. So he's been really healthy for a long time. So I expect him to get it right. They took their time with this injury coming back. But now we also have Mike Williams that is injured and out. So he's going to get funneled targets. I know Josh Palmer and DeAndre Carter will be involved, but it's always been Josh Allen and Keenan Allen. Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen.
Yep.
They've always been in sync. They've always, you're always looking at 1,000+ yards, 6 to 8 touchdowns. Like that's just what happens year in, year out. It was looking like that was going to trend towards the same exact thing this year before the injury. And right now, non-contending teams are thrilled to get him off their roster because he's 30 years old. Mm-hmm. That 30 years old tends to be that age where we start to see these receivers decline. So you might have this year and maybe one more year with Keenan Allen, but this isn't a long-term thing. So middle of the road teams, rebuilding teams are happy to get them off their squad, but he could be a really, really valuable wide receiver too. That might even give you low-end wide receiver 1 production that you're not going to have to pay that kind of price for.
And I mean, he's finally 30, right? Like we felt like he was 30.
I think it was being bald. I think that's what did it.
Could be. But yeah, he is finally getting up there. So yeah, that's a good little buy, man. It's sneaky because, with the injury, some people may have forgotten about him.
Yep.
So I feel like somebody still would hold out for like, I feel like if you're going to buy Keenan Allen, it has to be like a player for player trade almost.
Maybe.
I mean, but the fair time,
you're telling me like if you had Keenan on your team
I wouldn't take a second for him.
I guess, man, I don't know.
Would you take 2 seconds?
Yeah. Would you take 2?
From a contender? No.
If you're not a contender.
Well, they're not going to buy Keenan Allen.
If you have Keenan
2
on
late seconds?
If you have Keenan Allen on your team,
you're
have
not
contending. You wouldn't take 2 seconds?
I would need a second in a player that I liked with upside. Like I would need something on top, like Christian Watson.
Okay,
you know what I mean?
Here's a couple recent
trades. Give me
trades.
a second in Christian Watson.
Which is
Christian Allen or Christian Kirk for Keenan Allen?
I'd rather have Keenan Allen.
Okay.
Christian Kirk? I think I'd rather have Christian Kirk because he's going to be around in 2 or 3 years.
Is he?
On a contender, I'd rather have Keenan Allen.
On a contender, I think you'll probably get more bang for your buck, but in the long run, I think I'd rather have Kirk.
Both runs, because I feel like I trade Keenan Allen for more than Christian Kirk. They just traded for Calvin Ridley today.
Yeah, he's about to be the wide receiver too. Speaking of 2 seconds, a 23-second and a 25-second for Keenan Allen.
Yeah, listen, I guess 2 seconds is definitely fair.
24 first. 24 first.
Yeah.
Would you be on that?
Oh, any first.
Because that's, well, no, I'm saying as a contender, would you give up your 24 first to get Keenan Allen? Mm-hmm. So that's the rough price range.
I'd almost, honestly, if I was a contender, I feel like Keenan Allen's worth a late first. Like that's what it costs me.
A late 23 first?
Yeah. I do. I mean, it's not like next year's receiving class is strong. So it's like listen, if I'm a contender and I wouldn't make that move now with his who was a hamstring for Keenan, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I need to see him come back for a couple weeks.
He did come back for 1 game and then they had their bye.
You're right. He did. So I want to see how he plays like this week.
Would you rather have him?
The price isn't changing.
Could you get DeAndre Hopkins for that same price though?
I don't think so. Not with how he's played the past 2 weeks.
If he would
have gone slow, maybe. But
I would rather pay a first and a second for DeAndre Hopkins and 1 first for Keenan Allen, or 2 seconds for Keenan Allen.
And for the record, that really seems to be the going rate is 2 seconds. I see 223 seconds here. This one's Kadarius Toney for Keenan Allen. So I mean, he's a guy that you can get.
Yeah, as a contender, then I'm buying Keenan Allen for that price easily because that's 2 late seconds. I could give 2 craps about that.
Yep.
I'd have no problem giving up a first and a second
Tyler
for
Boyd.
DeAndre Hopkins if I was a contender. He's an outlier to me, so I feel like he's somebody that's going to help my team for the next 2 to 3 years. At the way he looks, definitely with all those PDDs in the system, he's probably healthy as could be. So yeah, let's talk more trades, shall we? Good buy of the week, by the way. I like that. Definitely have 2 seconds. That's really good value because I'm in my head going, oh, you have to pay a first for Keenan Allen, which I wouldn't really want to do, but if I was forced to. But 2 seconds,
yeah. Or
easily
give Kadarius Toney in a second, or like that kind of stuff. Like, although he went straight up, so it sounds like you wouldn't even have to give this.
Did we talk about Kadarius Toney to the Chiefs?
We haven't gotten there yet.
We haven't. No, because it went. Yeah, that happened on Thursday.
It was definitely in between our last show and this show.
Yeah, it was on Thursday because I talked about it on the Better Sports Network, but I did not talk about it. We haven't talked about it on here, so that's true. He
got traded in Abracadabra. His hamstring's healthy.
Yeah.
Hey, look at that. Weird.
Yeah, check that guy for peds.
Yeah. Passed the physical. Now he's ready to go. They're going to ease him in.
It's such an interesting, because once he got traded, I reached out to somebody. I was like, hey, what would you want for him? He's like, honestly, like it'd be hard for me not just trade him for a first because there's so much upside. Like
I talked about him on the Better Sports Network show. I was like, I thought I talked with him or with you about him. You were on BSN this week.
Yeah, it was.
Me. We talked about it then.
Okay,
that's why I was like, I could have swore we talked about this, but we didn't.
It's an interesting scenario, right? Like, what would you pay for Kadarius Toney? I'd pay 2 seconds.
I don't know if it would get done.
It wouldn't get done, but it's the most I'd pay.
Because on the opposite end, like we kind of came to the conclusion, I think, that he's basically a hold because
he is.
You're going to want a first for him.
Yeah.
But I don't know with all of the red flags that anybody's willing to give a first.
That's the thing. Andy Reid, he is willing to give people second chances, and sometimes it works out.
It does.
Sometimes it's Antonio Callaway, and you just never hear from him again.
Correct.
I forgot the guy who was even existed.
Yeah. So this could go either way. And what did they give up for him? It was a third. Third. So it's not like big time. I mean, that's an okay pick, but they're likely to be picking at the back half of that, back end of that third round anyway. And to them, that might not be that hard to recoup somewhere else down the road.
Comp pick.
Yeah, it could be a comp pick.
If Eric Bieniemy gets a job, which he won't, that'd be a comp pick.
Right.
And the trades for Kadarius Toney are hilarious because they're all over the map.
I can't even imagine. But that's like when you said Keenan Allen for Kadarius Toney, like if I was in rebuild mode, I want to offload him. That's a perfect move to make. Yeah. Like give me upside. If I miss, I miss. My team already sucks.
Right.
You know what I mean? But if I hit,
jackpot.
Helps the process along.
Yep,
there's a surprising amount of Kadarius Toney for seconds actually on here, which I'm kind of surprised by. But then you have some ridiculous ones that are like Kadarius Toney in a second for Tyreek Hill. And so you have like some of those where it's like,
wait, what?
Right? Kadarius Toney and 2 seconds for Debo. So you have it's all over 1 second for Toney, and then the others are premier receivers and some picks to get.
I guarantee those are Chiefs fans that just this is gonna work. Look at what Kadarius Toney did when he was on the field.
Tyreek.
You put the ball in his hands.
Right.
He's explosive. His lateral agility, his jump cuts are great. This is great for with Pat Mahomes.
It's wild.
Sidearm. It has to be right.
You would think because, like I said, the trades there's not a consistent he's roughly going for this. They are all over the map. So I guess throw an offer out there if you believe in him at all.
Yep,
I'd pay a second.
Low ball an offer. If it works, it works. If not, no harm, no foul.
I would be willing to roll the dice on him for 1 second.
Two,
I would not do a first because it's just as likely to blow up in your face.
And I would do. That's a move I'd be willing to do even if I was say right now I was in third from the bottom, right? So I was in third, what's that, 10th place in my league. So I was in 10th place, and right now it looked like my pick was going to be 2-3 in the 23 class. So it's pretty appetizing, right? It's enticing. I'd pay that for Kadarius Toney.
I would not.
I would
not if I was that high up. I wouldn't.
I feel like him in New York was the problem. You know what I mean? He obviously wasn't hurt in New York, so it was a clash. New coach, and him butt heads. He came out of the college with that attitude adjustment, but now he's going to go to a situation. Sometimes when you go to a situation and you have a coach like Andy Reid and you have a quarterback like Pat Mahomes, that's enough to get those kind of players in line. You know what I mean?
It is
the fault because Andy Reid, you're not going to talk to Andy Reid. Probably Table's a great coach, but it's different talking to Super Bowl winning Andy Reid and MVP Pat Mahomes than it is with Daniel Jones and Brian Dable. You know what I mean? So I think, and there's times where we like Kadarius Toney. We put on tape and we put on NFL tape. So
I really like Kadarius Toney, the athlete, the player.
Yeah, I think I'd be okay paying with that 2-3.
Toney in a fourth, and you get Drake London.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity out there.
There's a lot of crazy values for this guy.
It's all over the map, guys.
Another big receiver got traded today, Chase Claypool to the Bears. They gave up their second round pick, which is going to be probably a decent pick there too.
Right.
That was when I saw that go through. I was like, that's a lot. So, I mean, that really helps out Justin Fields, who desperately needs that big body receiver, that go receiver. Because Darnell Mooney, we've said this since he blew up. He's just a complimentary receiver.
And now he can play that role of the number two.
Yep.
Very solid. Very solid. If he's my wide receiver 3, I'm okay with it. I don't love it, but maybe if anything, a better talent helps Darnell Mooney. Like it helps because he's not a number one receiver in the NFL. Maybe this helps Cole Kmet a little bit too open the field, but they paid him. They're going to you would have to imagine like this is going to work out where they're going to extend him.
Oh, you'd have to if you're going to give a second round
draft pick for a player on the last year of his deal. Yes, you got to expect that there's going to be some sort of extension coming down the road. And beyond that, though, I love the player fit with Justin Fields. I think you were kind of alluding to that, but Justin Fields has always thrown a beautiful deep ball, and Claypool is a guy that you can chuck it downfield to anyway. And he's around 6'4". I mean, he's not maybe the best high point type of guy, but he is a big body that can get
and he's
down.
A good athlete.
And he's a very good athlete. Yep, he can get downfield.
And it's interesting. We were originally one of the talking points the night before the trade deadline, and we had because I anticipated one trade for a third down running back, and that was going to be about it. And we ended up having a lot more. But one of the talking points was going to be on Justin Fields, who's been surprisingly good for fantasy, especially as of late. Past 3 games, 7th, 5th, and 3rd overall in quarterback scoring. So he's putting up points. I know it's a little more with his legs, but points are points.
Points are points, and they're starting to play a little bit better, and they're putting a little bit more on. I talked about this earlier in the year, and I feel like
that's 100% what they're doing, and they're winning enough games to get you out of that scary range of, well, what if they were to, now it's not even really as much of a question because they're in that safe range.
Yeah, it helps a lot. It's gonna be. I'm very interested about this trade because it intrigues me.
There's a lot to give up.
I mean, in Pittsburgh, where Claypool is playing, like they're playing in the slot. Like he's not a slot receiver. Move him onto the outside here. So that's interesting. That intrigues me. Like, okay, was he being misplayed there in Pittsburgh? Because you have George Pickens, you have Deontay Johnson. That's a given, right? He's going to go to Chicago, who desperately needs a receiver. I would have loved to see him go. I would have loved to see him go to the Packers, Chase Claypool.
That would have been nice. Yeah.
That's almost worth like a late first to gamble on because of the deep ball at Rodgers.
Claypool's basically who they were hoping Christian Watson would be.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, they're very similar style players.
So we'll see where it goes. Still, it's only 25 years old. From a pick standpoint, what are you looking at, Claypool? Like, is it okay? Rewind it. Are you even interested in gambling on this pairing, this new marriage? Are you even interested in throwing offers out there for Claypool? I know I'm not interested, but like if somebody approached me like, hey, I'll give you Claypool, for example, Matt, I'll give you Chase Claypool. I know you're trying to compete this year. Give me your second. I'll give you Claypool. So say anywhere from 2.9 to 2.12.
Yeah.
Because I'd be real hesitant to do that.
I'm very hesitant. He's just been a very up and down type of week in and week out, not sure what you're going to get out of him. And I don't know that this offense is, at least this year, going to blossom enough where it's going to be a consistent thing from him. So if I'm a contender, I'm not sure I'm going out to get him. I think I'd rather go different routes. No, other guys that we were talking about.
This is in your mail. You don't even go out to get him. It just shows up. Like this guy has Claypool. He puts in everybody's in the league's inbox. Like he sends trades offers to everybody.
Second Claypool.
You get out the show. You see in your inbox, hey, Rich just offered Claypool to me for my second.
I'm going to say no thanks.
You'd say no.
Yeah,
I would do it. I would absolutely do it. If
we're send him to everybody in the league.
If we're gonna take the risk on Kadarius Toney, who's got a lot of question marks. There's a lot less question marks around Chase Claypool. I get it's not as good of an offense, but there's nobody in that offense that's like we have to give this guy a ton of targets. Like that player doesn't exist. I know we like Cole Kmet, we like Mooney, but you give a second round pick for a guy, you're planning on him being a focal point of the offense, especially for a team that's given up a decent amount of picks lately because they had to give up some to get Justin Fields. And so they don't have a plethora of picks to just throw around. They're not a team with 2 firsts and 3 seconds where it's easy to just, that's a lot of draft capital for them to give up. And they have a lot of holes still too to fill. So
they had just gotten a second earlier
for the Roquan Smith deal.
Roquan Smith. So they did kind of have one to burn.
They had one, but last year they were depleted last year. They had like no picks at all last year. So they need as many as they can get. I think he's going to be a focal point. And look, even if he is just a wide receiver 3 for fantasy, I would give my second in a draft to get a wide receiver 3. So yeah, for me, easily I would give my second to get Chase Claypool.
Dependent on my receiving court on my team, and like say I only had 3 guys or whatever, like I think for everything that you said, what they paid for him, his youth, his upside, the likelihood of them giving him some kind of deal, even if it's a short term, probably 3-year deal.
Probably,
yeah. Say it's only like $28 million guarantee or something along those lines. I think I would accept. If it depends, like I wouldn't just accept just because of the player. Like it'd have to be a need on my roster.
Sure.
Like I would need another receiver.
And the good part is he fits almost any roster type because he's young enough where if you're in a rebuild, like I would hesitate to like give 2-1 maybe, but if it's 2-3, 2-4, and I'm more in a rebuild, like he's young enough to where he could still be on my team in 4 or 5 years and still be a player for me.
Tony or Claypool?
Claypool.
Matt?
I mean, I think Claypool has a much better. I think he has a lot more. I think he's safety built into him, and his ability to just be available for the next 3 years. I think probably puts him over the top of Tony for me, just because who knows what you're going to get.
But you were going to give a second for Tony, but you wouldn't for Claypool.
Listen, Garrett.
Gotcha, bitch.
Listen, man. Just because you love Cole Kmet, I don't know how this wraps into it, but just because you love Cole Kmet
doesn't mean Williams loving son of a gun.
Doesn't mean that I'm gonna,
DJ Dallas is about to get you.
Doesn't mean that I'm going to trade for this guy. Okay.
Just because you're mad because Travis Homer came back this week and took all of DJ Dallas's receiving yards. How dare you put that hatred on me? Interesting moves, but. When you play Dynasty, I mean, these are the kind of moves and gambles you make because it's hard to, like, a lot of times you're making these trades, it's like, oh, I think I'm getting this. Like, you're always looking for those big time upside trades, right? Like, those players that it's so much harder to get. Like, I say it all the time, what's an overpay today is underpay tomorrow. Sure. That's what you're looking for. And these are 2 players we just talked about that offer that kind of upside. Yes, could they just flame out and give you nothing?
Of course.
100%. Of course. Could it just be middle of the road guys in a roster that you like Marquez Valdez-Scantling? Like, I gave him a second for Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and it's like, here I am.
And play him twice a year on desperate bye weeks.
Yeah. And a guy that you're never going to cut, but you never really want to start. And if you start him, then you're not contender anyways.
Can you cut Marquez Valdez-Scantling? You can cut him, right?
I mean, I wouldn't. You could.
You started Devontae Parker.
Different team. Different team, man. Different team.
No, I mean, in 25, 30-man rosters, not cutting MVS.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just because, again, it's a
I have them on my our 30 roster, and I just hate looking at them now. Like, I just don't even want to see you. Any offer for him, I would say yes to.
What league is this?
Dynasty.
Oh, I need a receiver in that league.
Come get some.
Oh, in between shows, I'm about to come get him. I am going to come get him.
He is my 4th.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what.
Remember that show we did last year? He's like, what player was it? Do you remember by any chance? I would take any second right now for him. I'm like, oh, okay.
I'll give you my second.
I offered a second. He declined it. False advertiser.
Listen,
Matt, you're getting called on the carpet.
I talk up a big game.
You're talking about cutting him. I was like, here, I'll give you a 6. Oh, that's way too low.
I mean, I'll keep him for a 6th. All right, Jesus.
Can you cut him?
You were gonna cut him.
Yeah. God, I was just asking. I was asking for a friend too. It wasn't even
for me.
It wasn't even
I don't have him. I have Devontae Parker.
Where are we at on time for the show? We got more trades to talk about.
102 seconds. 102.
1 hour and 2 minutes?
Yeah, 1 hour is 2 minutes.
Okay. Let's get through a couple of these in real quick.
Because we still got Hines and Ridley to talk about.
Oh, dude. So Chase Edmonds.
And Chase Edmonds and Jeff
goes to
Wilson.
the Broncos.
Should we save some of this for the Nerd Herd show and then get into the?
We could.
Yeah,
we could talk about that.
I feel like we're going to spill over. It's going to be about an hour and a half by the time we get through.
We got like 15 minutes to talk about these guys. So we got to talk about Calvin Ridley, Chase Edmonds,
Jeff Wilson,
and
Nyheim Hines.
And Nyheim Hines.
Yeah,
we'll do it in the Nerd Herd show.
Yep.
All right, well, we're going to jump into the Nerd Herd show right now then. We're going to do some Dynasty trades, real trade questions on there, and we're going to cover the rest of these guys on here. And if you want to get part of the show, again, just support the show. It's as simple as buying 1 cup of coffee a month. That's how you support our show. You buy me 1 cup of coffee a month, and you get an extra podcast. So if you enjoy our podcast and you're like, yeah, I'll enjoy your podcast, but not enough to pay for it because, and I get it, inflation, all that stuff. I understand not paying for website services. Like, why would I pay for that? Well, we're going to bring you another podcast for an hour, hopefully entertaining and some,
good information,
knowledge, some good information in there. And then you get all our tools. The Dynasty GM is, again, I saw we had a meeting last week on the Dynasty GM 2.0. And when I tell you that this thing excites me, it's going to be done. Our developer said by December, like Christmas time, for the update. And one of the things we're going to have on there is I literally think it's going to be industry changing. Like what you'll be able to do
again,
and
industry changing again.
I mean, it's already to me the best tool in the business with the league analyzer. But what you're going to be able to do in here is going to give you the opportunity to manage your dynasty teams and give you a look like no other tool in Dynasty Fantasy Football does. It will make sure that you're looking at Dynasty Fantasy Football from your perspective.
Yep.
I don't want to say too much. You know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to hold back here. But it literally blew. Not only did it look great, like aesthetically,
right,
but the power that this tool is going to do and the information we're going to get out of it and get back to all of your users as well is going to be so worth the cup of coffee. So you get the extra podcast, you get the Dynasty Nerds film room as we talk about the 23 class. You get to watch all these rookies and watch their tape. Literally watch a whole game in 5 minutes, all 22 film. You get the nerd score on there, which has been absolutely tremendous so far going into year 4.
This will be our 4th year.
Fourth year going into that.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that is nuts, man.
So for the price of a cup of coffee, you get all of this that I just mentioned, the podcast, the tools, the film, everything you need to succeed at Dynasty. And yes, you're paying money for it. Yes. But I also want to say, like, when that money comes in, this money goes right back into Dynasty, right? Like, when I'm excited about this GM 2.0 coming out, and we have so much more lined up after that, that it just takes time to develop it. Your contributions goes back into the game of Dynasty itself by building more tools for you. And the more tools we build and the more information we get, like ADP wise, what players are doing, that goes right back into the tool to give you more information. Because we take all of this information from all the leagues that we have from users, because you can put Sleeper in there, FFPC, MFL, Flea Flicker, all these leagues you can import in your league manually and manage all your leagues in one spot. So if you have Dynasty leagues in multiple different locations, they're all in one app. And again, I say the word app because we're coming to an app. We already have the Dynasty Nerds app right now. It's a mock draft tool, which is super fun, definitely for rookie drafts. But everything we have is going to this app as well. So it'll be in your phone, in your pocket, so much for the price of a cup of coffee. I encourage everybody to give it a chance. Stick with us. Definitely the 2.0 comes out, so 2 months. So you buy me 2 cups of coffee for 2 months. Then stick around for the film room. That 1 cup of coffee that you buy me a month. And if you can't stand me, which is understandable, buy Garret a cup of coffee. I mean, guy has a long drive home. He needs to stay awake. And I always say this because I know it sounds cheesy, but you're also supporting the game of Dynasty Fantasy Football. So we appreciate it. Everybody that signs up, we have one goal here at Dynasty Nerds. It's been our mission since the first time we did a podcast 9 years ago to grow the game of Dynasty Fantasy Football. And I feel very grateful that we've had our hands in that, Matt, you
Absolutely,
and I, since the get-go, and since Garret has joined us to kind of watch this game evolve. And I know sometimes people call me, or I get on the shows like, "Oh, this guy's a godfather of Dynasty." It's like, what that? I know I've been playing for a while, but that makes me feel good that Dynasty Nerds has been around long enough that we're looked at like, hey, this is a set
we've been
stone.
established. Yeah,
and I'm so grateful for sometimes when I see how many people listen to the show, it blows me away. Like how it's mind blowing, like how many people listen to the show, and I appreciate every single one of you. But I encourage you to not just take this information and entertainment, but take advantage of the tools that we built to help you along. And I've been playing for 20 years. I don't rely on these tools, but they're extremely helpful for me.
I was gonna say I use the GM all the time. It's not just one of those things where we publicize it because it's ours and we want to get money. And I literally use the GM tool weekly. Yeah. And I've been playing Dynasty for a decade.
Right. It helps organize.
Still use it weekly.
It helps organize your thoughts. It helps organize your teams and
other people's teams.
And absolutely other people's teams and figure it out. And We got the trade browser that we're constantly using to try to
using it on the show. That's what I talked about all show.
We're trying to figure out value on players. That's such a useful part of it that we probably don't talk about quite enough.
We never talk about. We just mention it casually on the show.
Right, absolutely. So there's so many little nuances in there. Get in, dig into it, find out what works great for you, and keep at it.
Yeah. So I encourage everybody, price a cup of coffee, go to dynastynerds.com, join the Nerd Herd today. And like I said, it's just, I think you made a good point, like Garrett, when you said, like, you guys are trying to sell memberships so they can make all this money. Like, I don't do this for the money from Dynasty. I do this to make more dope ass tools for you to use, because again, it's not just for you to use. I build the tools that I want. You know,
just assume other people would want these too.
The one of the privileges that we have of being, at the peak of the mountain when it comes to Dynasty Nerds is we have the final say of what we want to build. And as somebody who's been playing for 20 years, we know what we want out of tools.
Yep.
So selfishly, all these memberships just come in to build the tools that I want.
I'm not going to lie. During this conversation, I just thought of another one that we'll talk about after this show.
There we go.
It's going to go right in. It's going to go right in the roadmap, and I love it.
Perfect. Yep. Check us out, dynastynerds.com. Now let's jump to that Nerd Herd show.
All right, guys. Adios.